Hello, everybody. My name is Greg from Atypical Engineer, and today we are teaching you how to build React components. Specifically, we're going to build a React component using Semantic UI React. So this is a UI library that I like to use because it makes styling, it just takes away all of the difficulties with styling and allows me to prototype products extremely quickly. So I do recommend it. If you're trying to write your own styles or do your own stuff, then fine. But if you want to stand something up quickly that looks reasonably nice, then Semantic UI React is a great solution. Today we will be building just a header component for the Pokedex project. The Pokedex project is a free project that runs on this channel, and there's probably going to be 15 or something videos which begin with a gentle introduction to React and then have basically all of your setup, step-by-step process, and then we're walking through line by line and writing a Pokedex in React that you will put onto a remote server and have running on the real internet. That's not all today, though. That today is just for building basically a header component with Semantic UI React. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. To start out, we are going to go to the React Semantic UI homepage, and you can see here that we have it pulled up. It's Semantic UI React in big letters. I will put the link in the description section of this video, so you can go ahead and go there. But really why we're doing this is just so that I can show you guys where to get the instructions. So over here on the left, there's a Get Started tab, and you go ahead and click that, and then there is a command here to install. The Pokedex project is using npm, but you can use yarn. So I'm going to go ahead and do npm install Semantic UI React, but you can do yarn if that's what you prefer, whatever you want. And then we'll wait for this to finish here. And this basically installs the semantic library so that I can import components and use them. However, there is one extra step to getting React Semantic UI set up, and that is that you need to add the style sheets that come with a theme. And there's basically two ways you can do it. Number one, you can insert this link into the head tag of your index.html file. I talked about index.html in the previous video in this series. So you can do that, but the problem with doing that is that if you're developing on an airplane or somewhere without internet, then this won't work because you need to download the style sheets from the link that's in this tag. And if you don't have internet connection, then you are not in luck. So what I actually like to do, even though it makes the size of the code bigger, is to do npm install Semantic UI CSS. So I'm going to go over to this other tab. I'm going to copy the name of the package, and then I'm going to go npm install Semantic UI CSS. And then we are done. So these are the two packages that we need. After that, I'm just going to scroll down a little bit and see that there's some instructions to import this minimized CSS file. And I'm going to import that into my index.js. So I will copy that, and then I'm going to come over here to the code editor, to the index.js, and I'm just going to paste that line. Cool. So now we have we're importing the CSS file into our project. And now we should be good to go. So the first thing that I want to do, though, is test. So I'm going to scroll down, and then I'm going to see this little page with examples. And I'll just click on the first example button because it's nice and basic. And this is where we're going to get the first taste of React Semantics documentation. So the documentation is actually really, really nice. It's really great. It's very verbose, and that's actually one of the reasons why I recommend it so highly. This is the documentation for the button page, and there are all kinds of different buttons. You should definitely go here and check it out. But what we're going to do just to get moving is to click this little tag button, which expands, and it even gives you a code sample that you can use to test. So up here at the top, it has the syntax that you use to actually use the React semantic components. And then down here at the bottom, it has the exact HTML that it turns into. The first step is up here at the top to import the component from Semantic UI React. So I'm going to import button, and I'll copy that line. And I'm just going to go over to app.js and do this very temporarily. So I'm going to import button into app.js. And then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to copy the div wrapper plus the 2 buttons that appear above this little console. And then just for temporary purposes, I will replace my app component with this the div and the 2 buttons. So when I save this, we can see that the 2 buttons that come up on the React Semantic page actually come up in our app, and they're all styled. The colors are there, the fonts have changed. It all looks very pretty, and it took about 5 seconds of work to do. So this is the advantage of using a UI library. It's that you don't have to style everything from the beginning, and you can focus on building the product that you want and worry about the styling later. So let's go ahead. Let's take out the buttons. We know that everything works. So now is a good point to save our progress. We'll take the buttons out, we'll save, and then we'll come back over here to the GitHub desktop in the setup for this series. I encourage people to use GitHub desktop if you don't know Git before. If you didn't know Git before. So if you do know Git, that you can go ahead and do this stuff from the command line also. But we can just see here that we have changes to our package.json. Okay, in the video about the 5 files you need to know for Create React App, I talked about which files, and the package.json is one. So this has added a couple lines. So you see the one line we just added a comma to, but then the 2 packages that we installed got added to our dependencies list. So that's solid. We added the minimized style sheet to our index.js. So that's here. And we don't really need to worry about package.lock. I'm not going to really cover that in this series of videos. So instead, we'll just go down here. We will give our commit a name. We will give our commit a nice little description. And then we will go ahead and commit to master branch. We're not using branching yet. And now we can go over to the history and we can see our change with package.lock.json, package.json, and our index.js. So this is really cool. We've installed React Semantic UI. We've tested it and we've saved our progress. So now that we've gone this far, it's actually time to start making our own component with the library. If you watched the previous video on making components, then this shouldn't be too complicated. It's just a matter of throwing in the usage of a third-party library. But we're going to go ahead and do this. So we're going to start in the app.js file. And again, I had a video, top 5 files you need to know. Most of the work is going to happen in app.js and inherited files, or in imported files. So we're going to go here and let's finally, after, 5 or 6 videos, we're going to delete the starter code. And we're just going to, for now, just add a placeholder called Pokedex header, and this is in the same format that we made our components in the last video. So we're going to use the a const poke header, and then we're going to put the argument in curly braces and use the arrow function, and we're just going to return a header that says this is a header for some name Pokedex. So this is giving us a component that we can pass an argument into and display on the screen. And now we're going to go down and we are going to erase all of the starter code. Whew, finally. And we're just going to put in our Pokedex header, and with name equals to Greg, which is my name, and then we're save. And now we see that we have a header for Greg Pokedex. So if you followed, like I said, if you followed the components tutorial in the previous video, this is perfect. If you know how to write components, then this is exactly where we want to be. So let's start making something that actually looks nice. The first thing that I'm going to encourage people to do is that I like to split my components up into 1 component per file. This just allows me to separate logic much cleaner and keep dependencies separate. So I'm going to go ahead and make a components folder here, and then I'm going to create a new file called Pokedex header.js. And now I'm going to copy everything from Pokedex header up from the app file, and I'm going to go ahead and paste it in Pokedex header. And then I'll erase the imports that I'm not using. I'm not going to be using logo in this file, and I'm not going to need app.css because app.css is imported into the app.js file, and basically everything that I write is going to be imported into the app.js file somewhere in the tree. So we only really need to import app.css once. That happens in app.js, and so we'll delete that file. So now we have this component defined in Pokedex header.js, but we need to somehow transport that component over to app.js. So we're going to go down and just type export default Pokedex header. Now I'm going to go back to the app.js file, and I will first delete the Pokedex header because we're going to import that from the other file. And then I'm also going to delete the unused imports. So we got rid of all the starter code, so we don't need logo anymore. And then I'm going to type import Pokedex header from /components/Pokedex header. So this is just the where the file is that exports the Pokedex header. And now I shouldn't have to change anything about the code in my function. And when I save all the files, you can see that here I am unchanged. Okay, so this is just a good way to separate your code and keep things clean. And now you don't have to worry about app.js anymore. Now we can just work in Pokedex header. That being said, let's go over to Pokedex header. In Pokedex header, the first thing we're going to do is add a div to be the top level wrapper, because again, in the last video, I talked about how you need to have everything wrapped in a top level tag. So div will be the top level tag for this. And then we're going to add a subheading, and this is just to test things, just to make sure everything's looking okay, and we see that we're looking good. So now let's go back to React Semantic. And in the documentation page here, you can see on the left-hand side all of this different stuff that the UI library offers. There is drop-down menus, there's input forms, there's grids, there's radio buttons, checkboxes, all kinds of different UI components, and you don't have to build any of them. They're all documented here. It's really nice. So we're going to go to something called segment. And segment is just, as you can kind of see here, it just kind of like creates a boxed boundary. So there's some kind of like container-like elements that you can put your stuff inside of to give them some nice spacing and padding. And when we go up to the top, there's this little button called props. And if you click this little trigger button, it'll list all of the different properties that you can give and a little bit of a description of what each one is. So that's really cool. So I'm going to go over here and I'm just going to say import segment from Semantic UI React. And if you, earlier in the video, we imported button from Semantic UI React. So any of the components you use from this library, you import them the same way. And then we're just going to go down here and we're going to replace this div with a segment. And then we're going to save. And now you can see that it actually does look a little bit different. Okay, I have a little bit of a border down here at the bottom, and there's a little bit more padding than before. Okay, but that still isn't really like what I want. So I'm going to put this over here just so I can kind of like watch what I'm doing as I go. And I kind of know what type of properties to add to get it to look how I want. But so this is going to seem kind of arbitrary. But the basic one will take out the border and the box shadow. So now we just have a basic segment. And then inverted, ooh, that looks kind of cool. So inverted will change it'll change the background, and then it'll invert all the components underneath it. So now the header components, instead of having black fonts, are white fonts. And this is one of the cool things. Again, when you're using a UI library, you kind of get a lot of things for free, right? I didn't have to write any of this code. This code all happened in like 10 seconds. Okay, and then I know that there's a prop that is called padded, so I can tell it to have very, very padded. Okay, and there's a couple different ways that you can specify padded, but now you can see that I have a little bit more spacing on the top and bottom of my text. All right, and then I'll just go and do vertical, because vertical helps when you're stacking segments, as we're going to be doing later in the tutorial. So I'm just going to add that, but you can't see an impact right now. So this actually looks way better than it did before already, and that was like one line of code. Okay, so I think that the power of a UI library, especially when you're doing prototyping and learning, if you want to go and learn HTML and CSS, then that's fine. But if you want to learn React, then like I'm always going to be saying, drop all of the complexity around React and just focus on React. And React is not about writing CSS and HTML. So next, we're going to go back to the React Semantic UI, and I happen to know that they have a header component. So we'll go to the header component, and then we'll go down here and we'll look at the code, and we'll copy it because every single example of every single component has associated code, so you can kind of copy that over. So we'll say header as equals h1, and then we want to make sure to import header up in the top. And now when we save, we go back over and we see that we are getting a header called first header, and then we still have our old headers in there, but this is giving us a very nice looking header. That's awesome. So let's go back and let's copy the text from our old h1, and let's paste it into the new header and then delete the old h1. And now when we save, our text is in the semantic UI's header component. So that's good. And the semantic header also has an h3. So let's change our h3 to a React Semantic. And then we'll add another argument called author. And this will be so that you can pass in whatever your name is as the author. I'm going to pass in my Instagram and YouTube handle. So we'll say author : and then the prop, and then we'll add it up there. And when we save, you can see that there's nothing in the author field. And why is that? Well, it's because in the usage of this component we're building, we did not add an author argument. So let's go back to app.js and let's add an author argument with my, so I'm going to put my Instagram handle. And now when I save it, I can see that I'm getting the author coming through and it's displaying on the screen. So that is pretty cool. Now I do want to do one final thing. I want to add an image. So I know that React UI Semantic has an image component, and one prop that I can give it is source. And in the source, I'm just going to go over to one of these, like Create React app comes with a couple logos, a couple ping logos that it uses, like when you do the Create React app and you see that rotating little atom thing. So I'm just going to use that. And when I put the image and the source equals that and save, then boom, I get an image right in the middle of the screen. And it's quite big. So let's go back to the documentation here. And let's go to image. And now I'm going to look at the image props. And then if I scroll down, I see that there is a size prop that I can add. So that's kind of interesting. So it looks like I can do mini, tiny, small, medium, large, big, huge, or massive. So let's go with small. So I'm going to say size equals small. And then I'm going to save. And that looks pretty good. It's proportional, at least, to my headers. But I don't like that it's over there on the left-hand side. That looks kind of stupid. So I'm going to go into the documentation again. And I see that image has a prop that I can pass that is called centered. And that means an image can appear centered in a content block. So let's go over and try that. So I'm just going to add centered. And ooh, now it kind of looks cool. I kind of like that. So it looks pretty good, except that isn't a Pokemon. It's it's the React logo. So let's get our own image in here. We're going to go, I'm going to open up my file explorer, and in here I have this picture of this awesome ghost Pokemon named Haunter. And then I'm going to drag Haunter into the public folder. So a lot of times when you're building websites, you don't really want to serve all of your images in the browser code. Like you want to use a different server to serve your image assets. But in this case, it's like at the very beginning of the project and this file is so small, then it doesn't really matter. So Haunter here is in the project. Now I'm just going to go over and I'm going to change the name of the source file to haunter.ping, and then I'm going to save, and look how awesome that looks. I have a little header, and this will serve as the header for the Pokedex project going forward. I'm looking back at the Poke header, and that was 8 lines of code, including like the function declaration. Really just 5 lines of code. I think that looks pretty awesome for 5 minutes and 5 lines of code. You can't really beat that. And if we go back to app.js, just like I talked about in the component video, if I copy this and paste it, then I can put as many headers as I want. Or what this means is that I can use this header in a bunch of different components or a bunch of different pages, or basically anywhere I want. I can go and I can use this header component. And the other thing I can do is I can change the arguments. And now I have one header for Shannon Pokedex, and the author is Shannon.engineer, and I have one header with my name and my handle. So I can dynamically update what the text is inside each header component. Awesome. So I'm going to delete that. We have a good stopping point now. We created our header. So now we're going to go over back to the GitHub desktop, which is the place that we're going to save our progress. We're going to look at the files. So we've added an image file of Haunter. We have severely cut the code in app.js. We've gone from all those lines to just one line, and we've added an import up at the top. And then we've created a header component that is 5 lines of code, of actual component code, right? The rest is just imports and kind of setup stuff. So this is awesome. Let's go down here and add the Pokedex header as our commit comment, or our commit title. And then we'll just add a little bit of a description here, and then we're going to go ahead and commit to master. Okay, so that's a wrap. In this video, we've installed React Semantic UI. We've taken a look at the documentation and kind of learned how to use it. We created your own component that will be a header for your React Pokedex, and we made a commit and saved it to your master branch. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you're following along with this series, stay tuned. The next video, we're going to be making an HTTP request and talking about state in React, and a whole bunch of other stuff that I probably won't know until I make the video. So be sure to tune in. If you like this video, then like, and if you have any questions at all, please leave a comment. I try to answer them all. Actually, I do answer them all. So thanks so much for watching, and come back soon.